Judy, thank you very much for having me. It's wonderful to be appearing on this very, very important subject in terms of re-engineering. And yes, Keysight does help you scale test. In fact, if we think of software development and how it has changed across the course of history, traditionally people would have monolithic applications where you would have one update that would be released once a year, for instance. Modules were under your control and was all delivered on one particular platform. In most instances, people had their own mainframes or a server under their desk. And if there was any difficulty that needed to be happened or needed to be catered for, they would simply plug in and plug out in terms of that server or reboot the server. However, we live in a world now where everything is connected and a lot of the customer experience is actually delivered by software. That brings in a whole world of change with constant updates, modules and features being released at a really fast pace. In fact, companies like Walmart or Amazon release code changes at least every minute, if not every couple of seconds. And all of that is aimed at really trying to build a really fluid experience for our consumers, because consumers demand a really slick, available service to affect a lot of what happens in our day-to-day life. That consumer mindset has really been taken into the business world as well, where just as easily as we want to be able to place an Amazon order, we want to be able to place a ERP request as seamlessly and as fluidly as that. And so the mindset of being a consumer has infiltrated all that we do. And that means that software has to change in terms of the experience that it delivers. How we do that, and if I think back to the lofty mission that Eggplant had coming into the Keysight family, we've always been very focused on ridding the world of bad software. Well, to be able to do that, you need to really have sound testing processes in place, because the software development lifecycle needs to be such that testing is no longer a compliance step that happens right before release. If we think back to that really fast release cycle that people have, you can't do that every single time. So moving from a very waterfall linear process to an agile iterative process is mandated for software development and software development at scale. People used to have, and one of the things that we come up against a lot is manual testing. Now, manual testing has its benefits because it is intelligent. However, it is time consuming because you are relying on the human to navigate the entire application. To try and aid that and infuse speed to that whole process, automated regression testing, is something that has been adopted quite regularly, and a lot of organizations actually have this in place. It is great in so much as you have the ability to automate a lot of different things. However, if you think back to the consumer mindset we spoke of, where people are thinking of really harnessing that consumer behavior where everything is fluid and almost instant, you want that same experience within your automated regression testing. And it doesn't always afford for all of the components on the full user experience to be correctly tested. You then also have siloed monitoring and test, where people are living in worlds where development on the front end is really focusing in on delivering new features to a user, and monitoring happens almost as a decoupled process where we go back in to have a look at how people are utilizing our particular app. Bringing those two worlds together is really what the whole notion behind the DevOps mindset is all about. So, uniting the worlds of monitoring and test so that you have a continuous test motion is really what we're looking to try and get to. I did say to you at the beginning, Judy, that I was going to mention a few examples of how Eggplant is actually being used in action. Well, on the slide, I have a few logos, Walmart, NASA, the US Army. Those are three extremely complex organizations. Walmart with a global retail chain looking to try and ease the whole experience, both in store as well as, interacting with physical devices. In a world particularly hit with the pandemic, we want to try and make sure that we take away any stressful experiences when in store. We live in a socially distanced world. We want to make sure that people go through their checkouts really fast and smoothly. So their point of sale systems really attracted the attention of the Walmart executives in terms of actually purchasing Eggplant, to try and test point of sale systems that in many times are still on, quite legacy systems in terms of the operating systems or the underlying infrastructure that it needs to instrument into. Well, we've solved this in a number of different ways. Working with one of our partners, we actually have a robot controlled by Eggplant software that can test out any pin pad combinations, that can test out point of sale signatures for automated signature or signature on credit card or sign on glass, depending on whatever the checkout system actually is. Well, that is one instance in terms of how Eggplant is able to go across any platform, any cloud, and any device. Think of NASA as the next example. Well, they operate in a zero defect environment where everything is delivered via software, whether that be a manned craft or an unmanned craft. We need to make sure that the software and the underlying code is absolutely sound. Now, this is one where, and the next example in the US Army is one where Eggplant's non-invasive ability to really test at that UI level comes to bear, because instead of trying to read every single line of code associated with that application, we can actually test through the eyes of the user and make sure that every feature and function that is set out to be achieved within the Mars rover, for instance, happens exactly as NASA had imagined for it to happen. The same with the US Army. There is zero defects allowed within the combat zone. And so any of the software that they are going to be deploying needs to be thoroughly tested, but in a non-invasive way so that we don't need to instrument all the way into the code base. Well, that just gives you a nice little understanding of the Eggplant environment and how easy and elastic the application can be to try and solve a multitude of different use cases and challenges for our customers, to actually help people really get on board with understanding both the software and deploying it to great effect. We have put together quite a few services to help our customers. Eggplant Automation Services. Eggplant Automation Services on Demand allows you to not only do it when you are initiating or deploying your first instance of Eggplant, but at any point through your automation project. And we have fast starts, which allow you to compartmentalize the time and really have access to some of our experts to help you along that journey. I do hope the last couple of minutes has given you an insight into what the Eggplant product stack can afford you. And obviously we are thrilled to be part of the Keysight family, making test a reality, not just on devices, but also on the software layer.